Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Good
My
afternoon.
name is, my name is Sherry Dawn Beaton. I'm the president of Religious Studies Student Forum here at Georgia State University. We had the pleasure of partnering with the Center for Ethics Student Forum in the philosophy department on an interfaith panel on the pandemic. So we hope to have a robust, diverse, and informative discussion with some of our lovely panelists today who are representatives from several different faith communities around the Metro Atlanta area. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Dr. Moultrie. If you have any questions at any time during the chat or anytime during the discussion, please feel free to enter them into the chat. I'll make sure to streamline those for you, Dr. Moultrie. And I'll also make sure that attendees have a list of our panelists with their emails if you'd like to reach out to them following our discussion. So thank you so much, everyone, and enjoy.
Thank you so much, Sherry, for helping to coordinate this. I want to ask the panelists with a sign of a thumbs up if you are okay for us to record this event. We would like at the Center of Ethics to be able to have this. I'm seeing mostly thumbs up. Okay, the power of peer pressure. We thank you for your consent, and I am going to set us to record. So I was given graciously a list of questions that we hope will create a generative conversation among our panelists. And the topic, as you all are aware, is dealing with interfaith dynamics during the pandemic. And so the very first question that I would like to ask, and I'm going to ask that every panelist address this question so all of our voices are brought into the space, is just a very generic one that gets us rolling. How has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted your attendance and religious participation at your events in your faith community? And I'm going to start with Omisharo, since you're in the center of my screen.
Okay, awesome. Well, for us, the main thing was shifting from open, public, anyone can come events to just scaling down to like specific members. We also changed the way that we gather. So we have a space that normally everyone comes to inside, but we shifted to being outside. We shifted to only a few people at a time. Particularly the larger events, we kind of just cut those out where we could, but we wanted to keep the space open for people who still needed counseling and things like that, counseling services, so they could still meet one-on-one to get those types of services. But a lot of our larger events, which in the past could have been up to 150 people, were really only about 20. Meeting. So that was one of the main things as far as size.
And I neglected to say, can you tell us what your community is and where it's located?
Yes. I am a priestess of the Ephah tradition. Our temple is located in Decatur, Georgia, and it's combined with our store locations of Yeye's Botanica. So we offer the supplies and all the materials that people need as well, and have the services, a service space with our temple.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm moving to, on my left, Banti Wajira. Can you please tell us your community? And again, how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected the religious participation and attendance at your gatherings?
Okay, thank you very much for inviting us, and just very happy to joining with this panel. And I am from Georgia Buddhist Vihara in Stonecrest area. So we are serving to Sri Lankan community here in Lithuania. So actually it's affect us so much of this pandemic, but we had to close down all the activities. But I mean that the incoming activities, that people who are gathering here, but we open up all activities online, and Sunday school and meditation program, discussion program, and more than before. Before we had only once a week Sunday school, yes, once a week, but we multiply that. It's 2 times a week of Sunday school, and we had only about once a week meditation program, so we multiply that to 3 to 4 times. So we try to keep them wherever they are in home, so they still feel like they're doing something, especially for the children, otherwise they are just playing with the toys, so the phone and things. So we try to keep them busy with inner cultivation, inner practicing, especially teaching them how to meditate and how to be mindful, and how to live with this difficult time, to forget all the difficulties. So we try to engage with many activities by online. It works very well.
Thank you for that. And can you share which community you are a part of?
I'm from Sri Lanka.
And
I came from
which type of Buddhism does your community practice?
Theravada Buddhism.
Thank
Yes.
you.
You're welcome.
Continuing in my Hollywood Squares bubble, we have Reverend John Bates. Again, the question back to you is how the pandemic impacted religious attendance and participation.
Yeah, so I might be unique. I am actually the executive director for spiritual health. I'm a minister, but I actually am not a parish minister. I also serve as an Army Reserve chaplain. So for the Army Reserves, it was interesting because we went to virtual battle assembly weekends where we were meeting over Teams, and a lot of the support that I provided, which would have been in person, was virtually over Teams. And so the attendance was, it really didn't change all that much other than just the format. My wife and I moved from Cincinnati to Atlanta in the middle of the pandemic in June. So we actually started watching virtually via Zoom and the internet. We first started virtually attending Holy Trinity Episcopal, and then we currently attend St. Martin's Episcopal in Chambly. So one of the things that the Episcopal bishop did was Bishop Wright made the decision that the churches should be basically shut down to all in-person attendance, and everything would be virtual. That was something that was very important. Since then, because of that, there was the attendance, of course, changed completely, and so you have a lot of local areas where their attendance, a lot of people have not come back, but there've been another. It's been very interesting because a lot of places there have been people have been able to reach out even more, but it's for the most part attendance has dropped.
Thank you for that introduction to the various hats that you're wearing. Next, we are going to go to Linda Grant, and please tell us your community and how your community has been impacted attendance-wise, participation-wise by COVID-19.
Sure. My name is Linda. I'm also very happy to be here. I am serving on the local spiritual assembly of the Baha'is of Decatur. And in the metro area, there are several Baha'i communities, many of them very small. And so usually we meet in homes. And so, like everyone else, the in-person meetings shifted to either being outdoors and smaller, and then a lot on Zoom, or on some electronic platform. And just a few things. I mean, it's so interesting to hear from everyone else, but a few like observations. I feel like one thing that was really interesting was that early on in the pandemic, it was really beautiful to see some of the younger people in the community helping the older ones get more familiar with technology that would be helpful, because they all kind of knew how to do it already, or they were doing it heavily for school. But it was kind of beautiful to see like the younger people helping, troubleshooting Zoom and all these things with those who maybe weren't as familiar. I thought that was really beautiful. And in our community in Decatur, we have several like community-based activities, like in the neighborhoods, children's classes and other activities for adolescents. And I feel like one shift in the pandemic was that the parents became more involved. Like maybe before, like children used to come for a children's class, and maybe the parents may not have known exactly. Obviously, they sent them, so they were okay with them going. But during the pandemic, like parents, like because we were on Zoom, like we'd see parents on the screen, and they got more engaged. In some cases, they became like children's class teachers. So I thought that was kind of neat that it became more family oriented. And then I guess the last thing I got to mention, and probably you all had this experience too, is that like we try to like make it a little bit like not purely online. So we like a few, as much as possible, like the local spiritual assembly would drop off like some art materials or like some food that we could all eat together. So when we would come together, there were like some things that we did to kind of try to make it feel a little bit more personal. So those were some of the shifts and I think opportunities presented by the pandemic.
Thank you for that, for presenting some of those opportunities for us. I will move up and over. So Rabbi Lesser, will you again introduce your community and give us some information on how it has handled the COVID pandemic and its practices?
Sure. Hi. My name is Joshua Lesser. Starting the pandemic, I was the senior rabbi of Congregation Beit Chaverim. In the midst of this, I've transitioned to emeritus and still doing some work at the congregation and doing a lot of other work in the Atlanta area. I had the privilege to also sit on the Jewish Federation of Greater Atlanta's ecosystem, kind of looking at how we might want to proceed as an entire community. And one of the things just interesting is I felt that it was really important not just to have rabbis and not just to have people who were engaging in some of the Jewish institutions. We had institutions like nursing homes, we had institutions like schools in terms of how to adapt. But I was really interested in also having and suggesting that we have ethicists and that we also have economists to really look at the financial impact of our community during this time, and particularly people who are feeling vulnerable, also looking at the ethical decisions that needed to be made. I really wanted to put forward and advocated for a way that we as an entire Jewish community understood that our interconnectedness mattered, so that if one synagogue decided to open up their community school, it impacted all the synagogues in the area because people talk. And so really, I had hoped, and I would say in some ways we had some success about keeping in mind, and particularly in the beginning of our relationship with one another and how we navigated that, which I thought was something that's unique to bring forward. The other thing that I think that's important to bring forward is, in addition to moving all of our platform, moving from in-person to online, I wanted to be able to respond to the spiritual crisis that many people found themselves in. And so I created what I would call spiritual scaffolding. We had a morning meditation every single morning, which was not something that was part of our community. We were meeting Wednesdays for a chanting service, and we had a 15-minute kind of grounding that I would say consistently through the pandemic. There have been 30 plus people. In the beginning, it was probably like 45 that were on for the first couple months, but there's been this consistent spiritual practice built that is separate from our Shabbat or Sabbath practices. In addition, we started a daily service in the night so that people could say the prayers, particularly to honor those who have died, and understanding the kinds of grief that people were having. That continues to exist today. And in part, without people having to navigate traffic, it's still, even though services are starting to move in person, these scaffoldings have more greatly supported the community. And the last thing I want to say is that through the use of social media, during our High Holy Day services, we took a two-pronged approach. Not only did we end up creating a global community for our services, where we had about 10,000 people participate in some ways in watching our services, which is far dramatically different than the 500 to 600, 700 people perhaps that come through. It was clear that approaching the services, trying to understand where people are at, adapting our liturgy felt really important as a way to speak to what was happening in people's lives. But we also sent boxes home to every member of our community that was multi-sensory, that had activities like walking the labyrinth with key questions. And so there was something to taste, to touch, to smell. We wanted to know people that they could have more agency with their own spiritual and religious lives. And we wanted to give them toolboxes to be able to not always be on Zoom, but to take charge. And the last thing I'll say is that we helped people create what we would call a mikdash ma'at, a small sanctuary. We knew that people were adapting their homes into spiritual spaces. So we gave them tools and offered workshops of how to turn a corner of one's house into a place that would be a way to respond, to think that they were in sacred space.
Thank you so much. Those sound like brilliant real-life applications. We will move to our final panelist, Covet Agu. Will you again tell us your community and how it has responded to participation and in attendance during COVID-19? And we need you to unmute.
Can you hear me right now? Great. My name is Javit, and I am originally from Turkey, but I have been living in Atlanta since 2008. I am representing Turkish community and Muslim community in Atlanta area and southeast area, because I am a chaplain right now, but before this chaplaincy position, I was an imam. I have been work as an imam almost 10 years in Southeast Islamic Community Center, or Istanbul Masjid in Alfreda. When this COVID-19 pandemic started, all of religious and cultural activities affected for this COVID-19 situation. We have 3 different activities in my community. One of them is religious activity, and the other is cultural activity, and the other is dialogue activity. We are very active community in Atlanta area. Just I wanna say what kind of activity or program we have in southeast area. Like before this COVID-19, we have art and essay context with especially young children, students, elementary, middle school, high school, and university schools. This is an annual program for us. And Interfaith Dialogue program, Table of Abraham, annual, every year we try to do Interfaith Dialogue, Table of Abraham, and Exploring Faith program. Learning about your neighbor can help you to love your neighbor. As the name suggests, Exploring Faith events are organized for the purpose of learning about different faiths. And our previous events have allowed us to explore various denominations and values of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, and other religions. And especially in Muslim community has one of the best important month of Ramadan, and we are fasting and we are doing iftar program, especially month of Ramadan. And we have neighbor iftar and solidarity through prayer program, lecture series, and awards ceremonies. And especially in religious activities, we have masjid in Alfreda, and Muslim people needs to pray 5 times daily. If possible, people try to become together at masjid. And especially once a week, we say Juma prayer. This is mandatory. All the Muslim community needs to be together and pray together. On Friday, we say Juma prayer. And the other important events for us, Sunday schools or weekend school for elementary, middle, and high school children. So when this COVID-19 started, we needed to cancel all these religious, cultural, and dialogue activities. Just I want to say this right now.
Thank you so much for giving us an overview of, for each of you, in fact, giving us an overview of how your communities have adapted and kept the youth active, kept the parents active, kept the community going, both at home and as you're returning in person. We want to ask another set of questions that are around the vaccine and the promise that the vaccine gave of allowing us to return back to normalcy. So can you, and anyone can feel free to answer. I'm not going to call on individual folks for the next set of questions. If you still feel led, please respond, just unmute yourself or raise your hand, which is down where the smiley face reaction button is. It allows you to raise your hand and lower your hand. So can you talk about how your community has taken if it has taken a stance on whether it's appropriate to get the vaccine, and has that been linked to participation in any of your religious spaces? Yes, Banji.
Okay, in my community, they all wanted to take vaccine because they are very responsible for still they are wearing mask, and then each and everyone they took the vaccine whenever it's available. Sometimes it's not available here, and they drove far away to get the vaccine because they wanted to prevent from affecting their lives. And not only that, and we arrange here the health camp in this premises, and we send out the messages and flyers and everywhere, and we also provided, the government they support, and we provide the free vaccine for whoever want to take. And then we took full responsibility to take care of that, and we encourage each and everyone to take vaccine, not only here, even back home, because that is only way to prevent at that difficult moment. So I think that is the only solution for now. And also wearing mask, which is still some people they don't care much about it, and I see people that they don't wear masks. So I think still they have to be very careful because even though we vaccinated, still we can can be affected to our lives. So taking vaccine is very important, whatever is available.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address? Rabbi Lesser.
Sure. I'll just say that I have had the good fortune to serve a congregation that had dozens of people who work for the CDC. So public health was a part of our plan, and we convened a group of people that we consulted with. And I would say that most progressive Jewish communities across the country have been strongly advocating for vaccines.
You muted yourself.
I said that, thank you for letting me know that there were many blessings that people wrote throughout the Jewish community so that people could actually not just receive the vaccine, but recognize that it was a sacred moment and that we were fulfilling the value of preserving and saving life, our own and the others around us. And so almost it was like an entire national Jewish campaign, and only the most, I would say, fundamentalist Jews in terms of a communal response pushed against this, which we probably saw on the news in New York in super spreading events. But most of the Jewish federations across the country strongly advocated and helped promote ways for people to get the vaccine.
Thank you. And you also will note there is a prayer for receiving the COVID vaccine that was just Rabbi Lesser put into the chat for everyone to see. Linda, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I just want to mention two things that maybe will be of interest. Like, I feel like, again, I feel like it was such a wonderful time, I think, for young people. I probably in all of our communities had such an opportunity to be of service. But on this also, some of those same young people who helped with, in the Baha'i community, like helped with the technology early on, actually volunteered to help make appointments for some of the elder members of the community who, now it's easier, but in the beginning it was really hard, right, to get appointments, and it was all online. And so I thought that was also like a really neat opportunity for the community to come together. And it was like a path of service, not only and in that case, it wasn't just these young people, it wasn't just like for other Baha'is, but I think there was a consciousness, and actually the local assembly encouraged anyone who could to help their neighbors, because I feel like, in this case, I'm sure that we all were thinking beyond just our own communities, but also the people, especially since during the pandemic, we were spending so much time at home. We kind of had a second community, which was right in our neighborhoods. And I think the opportunity to help have conversations, if there was hesitation around the vaccine, in one case, there was we wanted to have a youth camp. And there were several young people who were really scared, who were and their parents were very scared about them getting the vaccine. So I think opening up spaces for there to be conversations about, information sharing about the vaccine, I think also proved to be a path of service for many individuals.
Thank you. That has been essential. I do remember the importance of being able to get vaccinated, getting people into the system to get vaccinated. Reverend John Betts, and then Omasharo.
So yeah, for full disclaimer, I'm ordained non-denominationally, and so I'm not an Episcopal priest, but I do attend an Episcopal congregation. One of the things that Bishop Wright and the Episcopal Diocese of Atlanta has been clear, has been they're very much encouraging vaccination for all who are eligible, and it's been one where vaccination and mask wearing has been very much encouraged for everybody who's able. So that's been a beautiful piece. Within the Army, especially the Army Reserve, there are a lot of people who wanted a lot of questions answered. And so one of the pieces that as an Army Reserve chaplain we provide includes for people who want to seek religious exemptions, they have to have an interview with us just to gauge sincerity and to figure out, okay, how, you know, do they have the information, and how can we also see if and then once we provide we provide those discussions with them, and we have like a formal interview, that's when we talk with the commander, and the commander makes their recommendation for or against that. But it's nice to be a part of a community, a local faith community, where vaccination is taken seriously.
Thank you for that, and particularly bringing up the religious exemptions. We're going to get there in one of the questions, but thank you for introducing that topic. Yes, Iya Omasharo, you had your hand up as well.
Yes, I just wanted to share because we did something different as far as we didn't make any decisions about encouraging people to do things either way. We kind of left that to each person and each family to decide for themselves what they thought would be best for them. From some of the participants in our temple, some of them chose to get vaccinated, from caring for elders to having young ones at home to being essential workers, and for instance, one person owns a funeral home, so they have to be out and talking to people and things like that, engaging with people often. So we left that part to them, but we more so focus on your health and building your immune system and supplying different health packages as far as like nutrition and supplements and things like that, and just doing what we could on that front. For us, there was a lot of unclear information, I think, was the general consensus for us. So just as leaders, we didn't want to say this is what you need to do for sure. We want to leave that up to each individual to decide for their families. But we did still want to support everyone and, with whatever decision they made. And in general, for my community, our health is an issue anyway. So in general, whether you decide to get vaccinated or not, you still need to take care of your health. And in all of our spaces, we definitely were keeping the mask wearing and sanitizing and distancing and all those things in place as we started to interact with people as well. So I just wanted to share that because I thought it was very interesting that everyone was like, they were able to do some type of communal discussion about it, and ours were just so personal and specific to our different situations at home, from underlying health conditions to the people that we care for. Even when I spoke with my own family in Virginia, for them, everyone's experience has been different. So for them, they are even more so about getting vaccinated and making sure that everyone does that, to take care for everyone. We have elderly family members and we have young ones who can't get vaccinated. So it was important for them to push for that throughout. So that's all. I just wanted to share that.
Thank you for that. And Virginians Unite. I'm Virginian. We want to, if there are no other thoughts here, I want to change topics and ask another bucket question that, again, anyone can feel free to address. And this has come up somewhat in our conversation already, but can you talk with us about how your community has helped its participants deal with mental health concerns, whether that's grief over losing someone, or whether that's dealing with the isolation that's been experienced during COVID? And if you could talk about resources that your community may have made possible or available.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. Before this question, I want to say about vaccination, about my faith community. according my belief system, we need to follow up all the health care systems rule. This is our first responsibilities. And as a Turkish community or Muslim community in Atlanta or Southeast area, I can say maybe 99% all the my community got COVID-19 vaccine. We have never gotten any issue and concern for this vaccination. All of our mind clear for this situation. Just I wanted to share for this vaccination.
Thank you. Sorry to have skipped past the moment.
No problem.
Iya Umasharo, you were going to answer about mental health and how the community has been dealing.
Yes. So we have therapy services available, and we have different. Trying to think how to explain it. So when people would let us know that, you know, their loved ones passed or a friend or anything like that, we have different ceremonies that we can do to help support them. And then I actually created a group about 5 years ago called Grieving Our Mothers. And it was initially for women whose mothers have passed. We just come together and kind of support each other through that process. But through this, it ended up being like more of a counseling support system for people. So we had virtual meetings for that kind of support. Also, again, through the connection. So, you know, like I said, there's someone in our temple who owns a funeral home. So, you know, whether the services and what things are available to someone, especially if it was unexpected and they weren't prepared, to have someone that they know to walk them through the process. For a lot of our participants, it was very, very helpful for them. Many of them were younger and hadn't had to deal with any type of funeral services or processes or anything at all. And so to know someone and be able to get that support at that time was really, really helpful.
Thank you. Anyone else have thoughts on how the community? Fanti Wajara.
Yes, for us actually, luckily that our community, no one's family member lost their lives. But unfortunately, my mother passed away because she got affected COVID-19, and I had to counseling with my family, my sisters and brothers, because they couldn't attend to the funeral services and they couldn't even see the body. So they all seal it, and then within 24 hours they have to burn the body. So everything is informal way that had to do the funeral service. So I had to help them very much of counseling. And also, but some people who are here, like our community members, and they lost their lives back in Sri Lanka. But we have to take care of their mental, losing of their loved one. So what we always telling them, the life is not permanent. The death is always harassing us. Death is following us. So we cannot wait dying. So therefore, try to tell them this is the nature. Even this is natural disaster, the disease, but still we have to teach them and how to maintain your life without grieving much and without having mental difficulties of losing loved one, because this is not happened to one or few families. Hundreds of thousands of people are dying every moment, every minute, all over the world. So we have to tell them this is a general things that happening to each family, each and every country. So therefore, we try to teach them much of meditation to overcome their sorrow and lamentation. So that's all that we could do at the time. So we were able to teach them even through a Zoom meeting and meditation program. So we teach them the impermanency of the lives and nature of death in order to overcome their grievance, sorrow, and lamentation. So that helped them very much to overcome their problems.
Thank you. And our deepest sympathies on the loss of your mother.
Thank you.
Rabbi Lesser.
So I'd like to kind of call to mind a different but related community. When the pandemic started, I had this thought to organize maybe a couple dozen of my close multi-faith clergy friends, because I knew that I would not be able to figure everything out on my own. And so I created a Facebook group called Communal and Spiritual Responses to COVID-19 for clergy and spiritual leaders. Within the first week, over 1,500 people had joined. Today, it is close to 8,000 people. And one of the things that's been incredibly important, part of why I wanted to bring this up in this place is that clergy ourselves, we've had, we just heard there was the loss of a parent. We were facing our own needs within our communities, and then having to serve our congregants and sometimes the larger community's needs as well. And so one of the most hopeful things that I felt like came out of this pandemic was seeing a multi-faith community supporting each other, engaging in each other. And it became a space where it wasn't just like, how do we adapt this program? How are we going to observe Ramadan? How are we going to observe Christmas or High Holy Days or bring meditation onto Zoom? It became, I'm struggling as a clergy person with this sense of existential dread, or I am dealing with so much loss in my community. And there were moments where, from across religious place, people offering support, guidance, even stepping in to provide different kinds of actual support for people moving through this. And so to know that we've been able to create community so that we can all better serve our own congregants was really a beautiful thing. It was not what I set out to create. And so grateful that kind of Spirit worked through this group to really bring a sense of wholeness and healing to so many. I call clergy, we're not necessarily first responders, but we're perpetual responders. We're the ones who show up again and again and again. And so there's a reason why that there's a burnout rate in this moment that clergy are experiencing. And so to be able to provide some continual endurance and sustenance has been incredibly important. And it became a different congregation and community for me.
Thank you for that, for sharing that. That's so deeply important.
And I'm going to put the link to the group, so if there are any clergy who want to still join, they can.
We also, in asking the questions about mental health, yes, Shabbat. Imam, sorry, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, again, one more time. I'm so sorry. Yeah, when the pandemic started, like everybody, we affected a lot. We canceled all the programs, children's elder students like this. But after very soon, innovation, we got new innovation for our community. It's a WhatsApp group or Zoom program. We change all the program with Zoom gathering. So especially for elementary schools and middle schools, high schools, children's, they did all of their responsibilities with Zoom. Especially my community, Turkish community or Muslim community in Atlanta area, most of people are living far away their own family members. Maybe most of them living, they are living in other states or in Turkey, very far away. And so for this difficult time, we try to engage or communicate each other very quickly. And the Zoom program or innovation help us communicate each other. And we right now, currently, we are doing our weekly gathering or sharing with Zoom or T program like this. Especially the death situation, very much difficult for the people, and the condolences, what we say in Turkish, taziye, we did with Zoom program. Just I want to share this. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for talking to us about some of the benefits of Zoom. Many of us are Zoomed out, so it is a helpful reminder of its useful tools. You're on a panel for Georgia State, and so we have been dealing with students who are experiencing mental health moments, extended moments of mental health crises. And so I'm going to get to Linda, and then I want you all to reflect on, in general, how your community has had discussions around supporting people struggling with mental health during the pandemic. And if any of these are things that you're going to implement permanently. Linda, you're up.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I guess what I was going to share a little bit touches on that too is, I think that one thing that probably we all noticed is, individuals who had strong relationships already, it was easier for them to be resilient, or it was not that it was easy, but like the extent to which someone was socially connected with others, whether it be like, let's say for the Baha'i, our local community is very small compared to, I know, many of the other communities, but let's say in city of Decatur, there are, I think, maybe 50 Baha'is. And I think it became evident like how important these strong relationships are among community members and also with the governing, like the local spiritual assembly. And I think that like there was a recognition of like, those bonds, efforts were made to strengthen those bonds. Like we would have a Zoom gathering and maybe there are some families who wouldn't come. And it just became clear that like just sending a Zoom invitation clearly wasn't going to, all of a sudden magically they would come. But, an effort made, whether it was a phone call or, a personal visit with masks. And I think that it kind of a learning going forward was how important those relationships are. And I don't know if without the pandemic, we would have noticed that, how those need to be nurtured on an ongoing basis. And I think the pandemic made it evident, like where there were gaps and how important it is to fill them and strengthen them, actually.
Yes, thank you for that reminder. That's one sustainable thing we can take from the pandemic, is to nurture the communities that we already have. Anyone else want to weigh in on practices programs you're putting into place, conversations you're having around mental health and assisting those who are struggling with mental health concerns. Yes, Imam Shavit.
Javed. Yeah. The advantage situation for my community with this COVID-19 situation, this before this COVID-19 situation, maybe most of time, I can say 80%, 85%, we are living our society, like in Alfred or Atlanta area. But after this COVID-19, with the Zoom program, we are able to get a lot of support to other states and countries, like mental health specialists, doctors, nurses, or the other helpers. This happened for us advantage for my community.
Thank you. Reverend John.
Yeah, and my primary role is as an administrator at Wellstar Health System. And so one of the things that I've really just tried to impress upon my team members is the fact that, you know, we have an employee assistance program, an EAP, that provides counseling, and to utilize that. It's part of what we utilize within the Army. As a chaplain, I also impress upon the fact that mental health resources are available. There are some groups that are able to provide complimentary or donated time to provide those resources. And so making it so that it's normalized, so that people don't feel ashamed or that it's going to be detrimental to their jobs, has been one of my biggest aims, because I think it's extremely important so that people know the help is out there. Here's some resources. And so just simply setting a culture of it's okay to ask for help has been very important for us.
We ditto that. Within our own secular context, we've been encouraging our students to access resources and to realize that help is available. Rabbi Lesser.
So I sometimes say that my superpower is stating the obvious. And so there's just a couple things that I think are really, potential helpful just to say out loud, which is that when our, and when I'm saying our, I'm talking about the kind of Jewish liturgy, Jewish community, but it might apply to others as well. But when our liturgy and our services has the capacity to hold what is happening in the moment, that there is a way that what we offer on a regular basis can be responsive and adaptive to what people are experiencing. And so that's very much one of the ways that I have been leading through the pandemic, is taking in what is happening and, and using the opportunity for our time to gather to also be a place where people can bring their whole selves, that their spiritual self isn't separate from their mental wellness, that really what I hope to do is support the total well-being of our community. One of the things that was really helpful is that our chorus, even though they couldn't be in the room together, continued to meet on Zoom as a way to stay connected. And then they explored using different kinds of technologies. They actually continue to create music. And then this idea that some of the music that they created, there's a song that was about the pandemic that a singer-songwriter wrote, that our music director, our chorus director, arranged for a chorus. It got sent out, and then it was played in hospitals and in chapels, and to understand that you can have a footprint, that something that you are offering as a creative gift can then impact others, is another way to kind of support mental wellness, so that we're not just always trapped in our own story, but that we're actually able to connect our story to others. And then lastly, I'm a trained spiritual director. And so as someone who has been leading spiritual direction groups for about a decade, I knew that we would need to have spiritual direction groups around grief. So it wasn't just about the mourning or grieving process in the immediacy, but that ways that we were acknowledging and seeing the little losses that we were experiencing day to day, and how that played when we did have a significant loss, whether that was of a career, whether that was of a loved one, and to be able to be in community where we were attending to our inner lives and how we were responding to that. And I also created a spiritual direction group for first responders, to understand that those of us who are living with moral injury, which is being put in positions where our values and our choices are not such that they can align, and so it can cause internal, I would say, spiritual, ethical, and mental harm. So have a space where people could have some contemplative support in reintegrating their moral compass and code, and be able to bring the grief in having to make decisions in an imperfect world.
Thank you for that summary comment, and utilizing your superpower here to give us some closing remarks. So I'm going to ask one final question, and then I am going to open it up to those who are actively waiting to engage you. So the last question.
All natural testosterone.
Uh-oh. So the last question I wanted to ask was regarding policies and how your community is responding to the measures taken by the U.S. government or the CDC or the World Health Organization recommendations, and such as mask mandates, restrictions on public gatherings, public events, and if you have any final thoughts about the interaction between your faith community and these policies. Yes, shot.
Yep. The Turkish community or Muslim community in Alfred area, we try to obey all the government rules and CDC rules or health organizations policy. Our religious leaders or community leaders, we gather together, and most of time we inform or discuss our community. Just we need to obey all of the health rules and policies. Just.
Yes.
Yes, in our community, actually, they very much of respect to the World Health Organization recommendation, and distance, and wearing masks, and then taking vaccine, and not going out, and not having party, and me having meeting, and like before, not even having weddings, and not even having a birthday party. So they very much of respect what the government says, or what the CDC says, or what the World Health Organization says. Why? Because they are learned people, and scientifically they prove the certain things that we have to follow. And if you go over it, and then we are the one experiencing all the troubles. So we always have to pay full attention, what the government says. And sometimes some governments not saying right thing. So that's the other thing, but we have to always make sure that scientifically what is right and what is the CDC is saying, and the health organization, what they are saying, and the doctors and what they recommend. So we encourage our community just to follow what, especially what CDC and health organization, or any other doctors, or some scientists, what they are saying about in how to protect yourself. So social distance is very important, and still we are encouraging, even though some people is still coming to us, if not wearing a mask, we ask them, please wear a mask, because sometimes we say, you don't know whether I have COVID, so it can transfer to you. So therefore, you have to wear a mask. So it is very important to follow guidelines. What they were, they experienced people and learned people, what they found out about, how it is spreading. So therefore, it is very important. We encourage each and everyone to follow the guidelines of the CDC and the World Health Organization says.
Thank you for that. I think part of the heart of the question was the recognition of the ethical conundrum so many communities are facing, where our state and local governments have different policies than what are being preferred by these larger national organizations and even the federal government. And so I think the heart of the question was, how do you, as persons in leadership, straddle these competing realities and competing policies? Reverend Jack.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have colleagues. I have colleagues that I work with from different general Protestant faith traditions, and one of the things that I've heard from them quite often has been that they're concerned about one of the things that I heard was by closing the churches, they believed that it was a constitutional overreach by the government, in spite of the fact that it was for public health reasons, to prevent super spreader events. But they still believe that there's still the need for churches to be able to dictate when they can open and when they cannot. However, the Episcopal Diocese of Atlanta has been very clear. They follow the CDC guidelines, and in fact, they had various different. In fact, on their website, they have like an entire set of resources for COVID-19 regarding locations for testing, healthcare, emotional care, clergy support resources, different podcasts, liturgical guidelines, even. So but how do we it's a fantastic question, that how do we walk those lines but in that liminal space, and part of it is from a non-denominational general Protestant perspective. You can look at it one of two ways. You can look at it from a more very skeptical, the government is overreaching perspective, which typically happens with like dispensational groups, where the government is considered very suspect. And then on the other side, you have certain groups where they want to have the science speak for itself, and they're very open to that, the fact that public health needs to be held up. So I myself and the faith communities that I'm a part of, we embrace those guidelines, because we believe that the means and the ends are justified, because it's just doing good science.
Thank you. Rabbi Lesser.
So, I mean, I would like to put this in the larger context. And I think that we are here in Georgia, and understanding that, from my perspective, our government has not been particularly interested in the common good here in Georgia for a long time, and that there is a way where Christian hegemony and white supremacy influence a sense of how decisions get made. I know that sometimes there's a similar critique around science as well, but I just say that because I think that we are a community that is used to challenging our governor and our legislation and our legislators, so that we can understand our ethics. And I think that where we found tension was, how could we be out on the streets supporting Black Lives Matter protests and do so safely, in a way that did not continue the spread of COVID-19. Like, these were more the kinds of questions of how could we recommend continuing to take the acts of justice against our government, that I would say I don't particularly trust have my best interest, or many of the Georgians that I care about best interest at heart. And so it really leaves the decision of having to kind of discern what are the best public health practices that support the common good. And so one of the ways that we discussed it in our community, particularly in the first year, was we wanted to create an opportunity for equity within our congregation. And so even though some people might have gotten the vaccine first, or that there might have been some possibility to do some things in person, we did not want to create an in community and an out community. We really wanted to hold the community together. And as certain synagogues opened up more quickly than we did, we made the decisions to move more slowly, even though the state was saying we didn't need to wear masks, we didn't need to do these things. And I actually felt like that I questioned, whether Georgia's desire to support the economy as, the reason in many ways to say that we should open up our businesses again as the first state that did so, really risking people's lives, that I needed to be a voice to say to my community, we know that it is still dangerous right now. We know that there is a lack of care for Black and brown and non-Christian folks in this state. And so let's not be seduced by the other congregations that are opening or these other kinds, and understand our faith to be an expression of public health equity as a way of holding our community and figuring out how to be on the right side of the public health justice issues, in multiple ways.
Thank you for that. I think that is a perfect place to open up, unless there are any other comments that want to be added before we go to the chat. All right. So I have asked in advance for folks to preload their questions in. And so again, in the same format, unless the question is directed to a person in particular, please feel free to respond. If you would like to not type and to unmute yourself, Sherry Donna is going to help me with that, because I can't really see the attendees list and the screen at the same time.
Got it.
All right, so we did have a question here from a faculty member in the department, Andrew Walker Cornetta, and he says, building on this last set of questions that we just talked about, what sorts of debates, if any, surfaced in your communities And what sort of difficult questions did the pandemic surface? For example, were there particular disagreements about performing certain practices online, and how did you work through them? Yeah.
In my community, there is definitely differences. We were having a lot of conversations about how to safely navigate the disease and to also still support our community. It was a little difficult for people to adjust to going online and not having access and things like that. They were having a difficult time with that. But in the beginning, we just set things in place to follow all of the guidelines, transfer as much online as possible. Any appointments, counseling, whatever. If we could do it virtually, we did it virtually. Some classes that I teach, we plan to meet in person, and I think the next week we closed. So that shifted to online, finding new ways to still create community, even though we weren't physically meeting. But there were still people who were like, their arguments were about their faith. And, I was like, that's true that we believe in a higher power, but also that higher power has given us our intelligence to navigate things and to decide, what is good for us based on the information that's given to us, based on science, based on just best practices, just, all the things. Right. So there was definitely some of that within our community. And essentially, we tried to stay as virtual and closed as possible, with just a few things. When the summer hit, we did some things outside. But even, I think it was earlier this year, they were saying it was good, we can come out, everything's all right. And of course, everybody wanted to do things again. And then all the numbers went back up, and it was like, okay, cancel this event, cancel that event. It's too many people. We can't, and so that caused some friction too, because everyone was tired of being at home. So they were ready to be in person. But, we just felt like we still needed to act responsibly as the leaders of the community, to make sure that we weren't encouraging unsafe things.
Absolutely. Reverend John.
Yeah, it's great because challenge and adversity a lot of times breeds innovation. And one of the pieces that within a more liturgical tradition that I've seen, like I was in one when I was in Cincinnati, I was working with one group, and one of the questions was, are we able to do virtual sacraments? Being able to consecrate things virtually. And of course, you asked the bishop about that, and the bishop said, no, you can't do that. But one of the pieces that came up was, okay, well, if we're doing it in person, how are people going to do this? And so there was a long period where people just either people would go and visit. The church that I attended, the priest actually created individually wrapped bags that you'd go and you'd pick them up, and that you'd be able to take it home, and it was pre-consecrated. One of the pieces that was very helpful that actually drew us to St. Martin in the Fields was during the Lenten season, they created packets, and they created packets that were opened each Sunday. And so each Sunday they were activity packets for the children. And so that was the way they were able to engage. And my son, who's 3 years old, loved the packet. He was so excited. He's like, oh, is it time? Is it time? And so we were able to open it up, and we opened it up over Zoom. And then when the numbers started going down, one of the pieces that was allowed was we were able to start holding services outside. which was beautiful. So we actually had outdoor services, and it was windy, the planes were flying over, but it was a great time of connecting with one another, and I think we were all just very hungry for that kind of connection. So that's one of the many ways, and it's also the way that our community was able to grow in together as we were able to endure those times together. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, actually, yes, it is, although it is very big challenge for the people because they are not physically coming to the premises and then having discussion and they having, learn and practice and meditation and then listen to chanting. And then mostly they come together and we in front of us, physically we can see each other. But when we are having that virtual conversation, and I mean, they just like this, they they're joining from every corner of the places, and they they love to learn, and another thing that the great thing happened because physically people can come only limited people who are living nearby, but in virtual learning and many students, people, they can join all over the world, every corner, even the California, in other country, like, back home. So they all can join to the virtual learnings. And it's not like physically learning, but many people, many students, they got opportunity to learn from far distance. So that's something that happened for last 2 years. And but the most difficult thing that we found, they are home because parents sometimes they have to go to work, and then children they are stay home, and then they found a lot of difficulties. Even the stressful, even for the parents. Sometimes parents they cannot stay with the children whole day, and sometimes they have to work online. So they cannot work as before because children asking this and that, and a lot of disturb. But what we try to do, we try to arrange more program to keep them away from the parents' activities, and that way is very helpful. I think it's very beneficial. Even though we didn't put aside, they try to keep them together, teach them, they encourage them, and ask them to chant and ask them to meditate and how to be mindful and all these more teachings that we could manage last pandemic times.
Thank you. We have 3 other questions, so I'm going to ask the students to unmute in rapid fire, and we'll try to get as many answered by 2 o'clock. So Allison, Malik, and then we'll go to Dr. Bassett. Allison Joyce, unmute yourself.
She said she didn't have a question at this time.
Okay, Malik. Malik, do you still have a question?
Yes, Malik has posted his question in the chat, and I'll go ahead and read it. It says, what if any hurdles have you all faced in your outreach and conversion efforts as a community during the pandemic, and what have you done to overcome them?
I mean, one of the things I'll just say is that the Jewish community is not a proselytizing community. And so I would not say that we have conversion effort, so to speak, but if someone is interested in converting to Judaism, there is a process that one needs to go through. And so there were a number of people who were in that process, or because we had greater access to being online, more people. One of the things I didn't say about my community is, even though it's a very diverse community today, it was originally founded by LGBT folks. And so often a number of LGBT folks from South Georgia, Middle Georgia found us, some of whom were interested in conversion. So in some ways, Zoom gave us greater access. But much of the ritual around conversion needs to be in person. So we had to begin to devise and adapt how to actually go about it on Zoom. There is a ritual bath. It's actually the tradition that baptism is based on. That was originally part of the ritual bath within the Jewish community. That's part of the conversion process. For a while, it was closed. And so looking at what had been done at different times when what's required for a ritual bath wasn't available historically, there were other kinds of water rituals. So we ended up kind of adapting and creating rituals to meet the moment in order to support people who are on their conversion journey.
Yes, Linda.
Yeah, I don't know if this might also be of interest. Baha'i is also like there's no conversion, but in terms of outreach and service, you know, I feel like during the pandemic, like I think this has come up a few times. You know, I think we all sort of like our eyes turned a little bit more local also, and like just sort of thinking about who was around us, like who was just on our block. And I think that there are a few stories that I heard, like very sweet stories of you know. Baha'is and people of different faith traditions who would just meet together like in their neighborhood and like go for a walk and have prayers together. So I feel like that it's sort of, I think, a way that things were overcome, especially for those individuals who Zoom just wasn't enough. They just wanted to see someone and like be in someone's presence. Like I think that there are several stories and really beautiful friendships that formed among like Baha'is in Decatur with their neighbors who they may have known, but not as intimately as because of the pandemic. And they just wanted to like praise God together. So they came together in very simple ways. And, you know, you hope that those relationships will just only grow and strengthen over time.
Iya Omasharo.
So for us, we also don't do that either. But because we're connected to a store and our stores were open, there was a huge upsurge of people having time to just come and find out what's there, you know, what services are available, what we do. So there was a lot of new people coming to learn more, whether they became part of my specific community or just opened them up to even start considering their spiritual life. We had an upsurge in that altogether. And the ways that we generally came together, I call it like creating a porch. So there's a space, like I said, we had a lot of things outside, but for the most part, until it got cold recently, if you came to our space, most of the time people would be sitting outside. And so that was kind of how they came together, just to be with people, but not masses of people, and just to, have a little bit of a discussion, take a break from being at home, being outside and things like that. But we definitely saw a lot of people, reaching out and looking for other ways to deal with their challenges, whether it's at home, health, just suddenly realizing, the job that they've been working in, they haven't been there. So now they're like figuring out what else they can do, getting other skills, realizing they have creative talents, starting businesses, all those things. And we just counseled them in everything, whatever it is we could offer. So that was one of the biggest things We opened a couple of more stores during the pandemic as well, and just supporting people in, finding new passive income has been kind of like how they overcome the challenges and things.
Thank you. I see two hands and we're almost at time. So what I want to do is pass the mic to Sherry Dawn so that she can thank everyone and have her closing remarks. And then if people want to stay on and hear your final two remarks, I wish them to do so.
Thank you. Oh, I have a glare where I'm at. Sorry about that. I just wanted to thank, first of all, the Center for Ethics Student Forum for reaching out to the Religious Studies Department to host this event. We were super, super excited, and it's turned out very well. So thank you for that. I want to thank all the panelists who took time out of their day to sit and talk to a group of very eager, very excited students. So thank y'all for that. I want to thank Donna Hardaway. We wouldn't be able to have this WebEx platform if she didn't set it up and so graciously attended and make sure that our technical difficulties are running smoothly. So thank you for that. Dr. Moultrie is a faculty member in the Religious Studies Student Forum, in the Religious Studies Department, and very, very busy. So I'm so thankful that she was able also to take some time out of her schedule and lead such a robust discussion. And I think all my thanks are out. Thank you all. As Dr. Moultrie said, if there are any additional questions, feel free to stay on. I will stay, and I'm sure Dr. Moultrie and us, we can linger just a little bit longer. But please, if we don't get to your question, look for a follow-up email from either, if your contact is the Center for Ethics Student Forum, look for one from them, or look for one from the Religious Studies Student Forum. We'll make sure that you have information about how to get in contact with some of these panelists, as well as a recording of the video. And that's a great opportunity for you to ask some of those additional questions.